Hello, hackers, and today I will be doing the challenge Interactive Protection on MetaCTF. Okay, as you can see, I have already completed this challenge, and yeah, I will be showing you my thought process when completing this challenge. Okay, here we go. So, the description says you forgot the password to access your online account at a local bank. But you need to transfer some money ASAP, and their support isn't responding. Any way you can access it without a password. All right, so we're gonna go to the web page, and here we just get presented with a login screen where it requires authentication, requires a member ID with 5 digits and a password. Okay, but it doesn't seem to be much more to this, like much more functionality to the site. But let's do Control U just to go into the page source, see if we can find anything of use, maybe other endpoints or other subdomains or you know other directories, just interesting stuff. But from the looks of it, it doesn't seem to be anything interesting here. So it looks like our only functionality is the authentication process. Okay, so here we are going to actually just put in a random 5 digits. Oh, that's 6. Okay, there we go. And a random password, and we're gonna actually intercept this request. All right, and now we are going to actually just hit login to actually intercept this request. I have Kaido open, so all of it is, you know, basically anything that I click on is being intercepted into Kaido. And right here, you see that the port is 5990. So we're just gonna look for that in Kaido. And we see it right here. But okay, here we go. We get the post request, which is what we entered our data in, and it's being sent to the server. So we're just gonna send that to replay, and now we have access to modify the data. Okay, like the parameters. So here you know, it doesn't really, nothing's really super interesting yet. Usually I would like, obviously this is running a Python server. Um, and first thing I would try is to typically test for SQL injection. So we can actually do that just by putting a single quote. And basically we're gonna see how the server behaves in the response, and we get a 500 right here, which is usually one sign that there's a SQL injection, but in this case it's actually leaking more data than it should. And we can see it leaks a bunch of data, a bunch of directories, and we can actually, if we scroll down enough, we can actually see that it actually leaks part of the authentication logic. Right here, it leaks part of the authentication logic, which is interesting to say the least. And if you look at the bottom, it says console locked. I don't know. This leads me to believe, especially with the name of the challenge, it's called interactive. What is it again? Interactive protection. That kind of leads me to believe there's some that debug is on. So if debug is on, that means we can actually interact with the Python interpreter, right? So all we have to do is just go to /console, and if debug is on, we should be able to, or debug mode or whatever is on, we should be able to reach /console easily. And now we get presented with an actual interactive console, hence the name interactive protection. So I'm guessing this is the way in, right? So my first thought here is, well, we're able to actually execute, we're actually able to run Python code, right? So the first thing I would think is, maybe we can either execute commands or read files, right? So let's actually try to read a file. So in order to do that, we can import OS, and then we're just gonna do file equals open. But here we're gonna need a file to actually read, right? So just to test that this works, we're gonna do something that we know is on the machine, which is etc password, and we're just gonna put that in read mode, right? And we hit enter. And then what we're gonna do here, so we're gonna set another variable called content, and we're just gonna do file.read, so we can actually read the contents of the file. And then all we do now is just print content. And here we go. Now we know that we have access to actually read files, right? But if we actually go back to the response, when we put in our single quote, we get some interesting information here, including the path to the actual source code for the authentication logic, app.py. That's interesting. So maybe we can try to read that file, right? So I'm just gonna start this over. We're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna do file equals open, but instead of etc password, we're gonna do app slash app.py. And then we're gonna put this in read mode as well. And then we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna create a variable called content. And then we're gonna do a file.read. So we'll be able to read the contents of the file. And then we just print that content. And now look at this. We get the entire source code for the app.py or app.py. And we're able to see exactly how this application works and how the authentication process works, right? So right here is just looking for, is obviously like there's some kind of creds variable that is actually looking into, right? And is looking for a particular, is looking for a 5-digit member ID that's in this variable, right? So it's looking for that in the password, basically. So knowing that, we can actually look for this creds variable, which is right here. And we see that it actually has some hard-coded member IDs and a password, a plain text password at that. At least these are hashed, but nevertheless, we have a password here called password. Wow, very secure. Okay, so now that we have a member ID and a password, which is password, we can actually use this to actually log in, password, and bam. See, this is a good sign right here. A sign that is actually leading us somewhere else. Instead of we're not getting a 500, we're not getting a 200, right? Like we've been getting. We got the 200 when we initially put in a random member ID and a random password. That basically told us it was invalid, right? And we got the 500 when we encountered an error when we put in the single quote when we were actually going to test for SQL injection. So now we're getting a 302, which is a redirection. It's trying to redirect us somewhere else. So what we have to do here is just follow the redirection. And if we follow the redirection, we can see that we're actually logged in now and we actually have a flag here. So yes, this was the video. This was the challenge interactive protection on MetaCTF, which is a great platform for web exploitation and different types of web vulnerabilities. So Yeah, if you guys liked the video, then thank you. And I'll see you next time. Yeah, I'll see you next time. All right, see ya.